So do you think though, so I guess to talk on sex robots for a second, and we're getting into like the future, and maybe not
Do you mean Lex?
Lex is a sex robot. I love that when you go in his comments, everyone talks about him being Boston Robotics property.
Did they say that?
Yes. They're like, oh, one of the robots got out.
Maybe they're my property.
Oh no. Do you think there's this and again it goes back to like shock content, and I think a lot of people blow things out of proportion because they want eyeballs and ears, but there's someone going around kind of saying that sex robots are going to ruin society because men are driven mostly and primarily by the need to have a sexual mate and to impress a female. So if you kind of get rid of that and you give them everything that they need from a neurological and physical standpoint through a robot, that men are going to kind of stop being the creative builders and contributors to society, and that leaves women null and void.
I think we have seen that at the very least, dating apps have dramatically changed mating rituals in the West, right? I think that's kind of not in dispute. Whether it's good or bad, I know it's very complicated. I'll leave for other people to judge. So I don't see how, if sex robots, and they're going to be pretty sophisticated pretty fast, because already we're at a point where Siri's a better conversationalist than the average person. And that's a big issue that people are going to have to navigate. Because what is that cashier who's semi-literate and doesn't even know the inventory of the store bringing to the interaction other than wasting your time? Which is one of the reasons I'm kind of in favor of raising minimum wage, because I hate interacting with them, and the sooner they're driven out of that job, the better. But if you do have sex robots and it's normalized, and again, they're not going to look like robots. They're going to be passing pretty fast. You could just have a screen. It would be your face. Like, you could already have Tupac, right? As a hologram. It'd be really easy to kind of have this hologram shell. And if you want to be with Ava, she's going to sound exactly like Ava. She's going to know your moves, so on and so forth. That's going to affect society a lot. And I don't have any insight, and I don't think anyone knows what that's going to look like until it's kind of Pelosi with Obamacare. You got to pass it to figure out what's in it. But the idea that it's going to be definitely all good or definitely all bad are both ridiculous to me. It's going to be some sort of trade-off. And it's also going to be interesting that this is clearly something that's going to happen more early in like Western or Japan and industrialized nations than others. So how is that divide going to happen, and what's going to be the effect there? I don't know. But it's going to be something, and not a minor thing.
Yeah, I also wonder the availability, because I imagine they're going to be they're going to be expensive and inaccessible.
But so
like
are iPhones.
TVs, yeah.
And then within a few years, they're going to be pretty accessible. They're going to be discreet. You can mail them to your house. But I think very quickly, you're seeing this in Japan right now, there is going to be this subculture of like, this relationship is legitimate. She understands me better than, there's going to be some of this kind of misogyny. She's going to understand me better than any female who doesn't care about my feelings anyway. It's not going to be entirely false to say that. So like, she's going to only care. I don't know. It's going to be, it's going to happen faster than people think. I think within 10 years, this is going to be like a given, don't you?
I think there's definitely going to be a market for it. Absolutely. But I think like anything else, because it goes into the same argument with AI, and they say like AI is going to replace the e-girl, basically, like they're coming for your jobs, watch out. And then podcasters, there are companies reaching out to really big podcasters that have like over 1,000 episodes, saying we can basically, with ChatGPT and this clone kind of voice cloning, you don't even have to podcast anymore. You can type in a subject and no one will know the difference eventually. And even if the technology gets to a place where it's indistinguishable from the original human thing, I think it's like anything else where you have people that want the cheap, easy, like fast fashion, and that's probably most people. But then there's other people that really appreciate craftsmanship and connection and knowing that something's real. So you would have some way of verifying like this was made by humans or this is a real human on the other side. And there will be some small group of people that are willing to pay the upcharge for that.
Sure.
So it'd be like the
cars.
luxury way of living.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So I don't know. I think that's when especially it gets dicey when you talk about human connection, because that I think is so unknown. Like there's so many unknown elements of why that's so important. So we have, well, at least in my feed, I see a ton with like artificial wombs coming up, and that makes me so sick when I see that, because it goes back to just because you can do it doesn't mean we should be doing it. And sure, maybe it works. I think they did a lamb successfully, and they're talking about doing it first, of course, for women that are not able to carry. But
Yeah.
it's gonna get, well, it's just an inconvenience. There was this movie, I don't know the name of it. It had Amelia Clark in it, and it was kind of campy, so you didn't really know if how much of it was serious and how much of it was kind of making fun of this potential doomsday. And these women were choosing, they had these eggs, and you would have your baby in this egg, and you would hit a button to feed it, and hit a button. Someone's like, let me put music, I don't want them to be bored in the womb. And like, you're totally destroying the natural process, and in that you don't know the implications of that, because there's so much, I would say, magic that goes into human connection and like growing a baby. And it's, if we keep trying to progress for the sake of progress, you might end up exterminating everyone, and you have no idea that that's going to be the end. But I
Y-
get really gloomy and doomy when I see that.
I don't see how to stop it, because what ends up happening, and we see this with like child porn, which obviously you and I are extremely against. Like, they can crack down all they want, just go to other countries, and when people are starving and they, like, or they just film where the laws are lax. So if you have this right now, I think people who have surrogates, they go to India, right? So it's like, okay, it's illegal now. That's nice if I can afford. So now it just becomes just for the rich, but at a
Mhm.
certain point, it's going to kind of trickle down, or it's like, okay, so you didn't solve anything. All you did is just add basically a tax of a plane ticket, and that woman in that other country is going to have less protections than she would have had if she was a surrogate here in the States. I'm not saying that means surrogacy should be legal. I'm just saying this idea, like we talked about earlier, was saying, well, something shouldn't happen. Well, that's a nice word, shouldn't, but like,
Mhm.
how do you actually again, we're at a point where we can't even stop the production of pornography involving infants. So when people talk about shouldn't, they're having wishful thinking. It's like, we need to grapple in a world where we have a lot less control over our environment than we think we do.
Mhm.
And that's something that's very hard for people to accept, because so much of the media is about, like, we could do anything we put our minds to it. And it's a complete lie.
Mhm.
Like, we can't even stop, murders from happening, and all this other horrific stuff, child abuse. So I think, rather than, you can fight it tooth or nail, but you need to think things through. Okay, what happens if that tooth and nail fight doesn't work? What is that going to look like?
Mhm. Yeah, and I guess the answer is just education and just trying to like bring awareness to people that, again, there is no free lunch, so all of these things is very much a trade-off. Even with the AI and mentioning like child pornography and child abuse content, because the technology has gotten so good now, we have people that work in trying to like find these predators, like both online and in person, and they're telling us that the technology is so good that they now can't tell what is an actual child versus what is AI, and then it makes it really hard to find the original content. Makes it really hard to find someone that's watching the illegal content, and it's putting all of these kids at a greater risk. And here it's because we've progressed in the technological space, and that's, man, is that disheartening. It's like, yeah, you think that this thing is going to be a helpful tool, and it's actually working against you in so many ways. And I get so annoyed because there's people that are saying, well, you should allow the AI content because then it would actually help kids. And that's bullshit. It's not true. And it's, if you talk to any professional on the other side, it's not true at all. It's actually making it a lot more dangerous for kids. It's like, what do you do? And I don't know who was talking about this theory. It's not necessarily shutting it down, but I guess it's the idea of racing towards the end of whatever the end goal of progress, so the end goal of like figuring out AI first, or figuring out like, these wombs first, and then basically making a hard left and then shutting it down so that you kind of like outrun the competition in a weird way. But then you have to hope that the person that's steering that ship or that car has the moral integrity to do so and doesn't get captured by the power and like, I did this thing first.
Yeah, and also that means there's just an opportunity for somebody else to step in.
Hmm.
So, like, I don't see any way around this.